3.
Welcome to Data Center Changemakers Sweden, live from Data Center Forum Stockholm. We have a special edition this time because it's actually the 10th year we are here in Stockholm, and we have experienced so many crazy changes, especially during the last few years on the topic of AI, on the energy demand going on globally. So many important things to figure out for the data center industry. And Data Center Changemakers is here to making sense of it all. And not only do you have Data Center Changemakers throughout the day, we have created a little innovation with Inside Forums. And those are expert-led sessions and use cases which will enable you to navigate this very complex world of modern data centers. But first, we're moving on to the Data Center Changemakers. My name is Liselotte Lyngsø. I'm your futurist and the moderator of the day. Welcome. We have 3 talk shows scheduled for today's with topics in many ways that are related to one another. In this first episode, we have 2 subjects. In a moment, we're going to look at waste or reuse of heat waste heat reuse. And first, we're going to look at the ESG that you were already talking a little bit about this morning, Didrik. Data center operators are facing the daunting task of complying with sustainability reporting requirements. And so to help us navigating this tsunami of letters, we have you, Didrik, again. Thank you for a wonderful and provocative keynote this morning. And Stefan Frenzel from DME.
Hello.
And Thomas Rakonen from Uptime Institute. Hi, Thomas.
Morning, Liselotte.
Good morning. And Conor Molloy from Bureau Veritas.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. And you will be speaking into your microphone. Welcome to you all. To set the scene for our discussion, here is data center energy efficiency consultant John Booth, describing the 3 new acts or directives which the EU has implemented that all data center operators need to be aware of. Listen to what he had to say.
So there are 3 main pieces of legislation. The first is the Taxonomy Climate Delegated Act. This is primarily focused on the investors and provides assurance to them that the data centers they're investing in will meet the requirements of the EU moving forward. The second piece is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and that requires qualifying organisations to publish their Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3, and any third-party Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3 applies directly to them. So if you're an organisation that uses co-location or cloud services, you should be asking them for their information, which you can then incorporate within your reporting regime. The final piece is the Energy Efficiency Directive, which is focused directly on data centers. And that requires 4 pieces of information to be sent through to the Commission. But there's a whole load of administration stuff, which actually looks remarkably similar to the EU Code of Conduct reporting regime. But the 4 pieces of information are total energy consumption, the amount of that energy that's derived from renewable energy resources, such as power purchase agreement. Then there is the water usage, and then finally, waste heat reuse.
So, John, how can data center managers address these requirements as they come into effect?
They need to have people within their organisation that really understands this legislation and to develop basically a roadmap and a strategy to actually start delivering.
So, Didrik, at your opening keynote, you were giving this nice metaphor of the blackberry bush. I went to see the Confederation of Swedish Industries in Stockholm last month, and he said, well, we have one big issue in Europe. It's like we have put up road signs everywhere, which are the regulations, but we're not driving on the roads anymore. So that was his metaphor of all the stuff going wrong. So you say regulation is a good thing and we should just embrace it?
Well, in general, it's driving us forward. In practice, obviously, regulation is never perfect, and the fact that there are three pieces of regulation that are overlapping in their reporting obligations is not perfect. But I think every government body, including the EU, can share that fate, because nobody is perfect. My plea is, yes, you can invest and you should in better reporting, meaning you should pay KPMG or others to deliver you the best possible reports. But a better strategy is not do better reporting, but to do better performing, which means you invest in energy efficiency and you invest in water reuse, because I can tell you, reporting is most of the time the first step in a regulatory escalator. The next one is standardization. So now you have to tell the public how energy efficient you are. The data center in a few years' time has to comply with certain energy efficiency standards that are much stricter than the ones of today.
Anyone else has something to add for what John was saying,
add
Thomas?
a bit on that, and just saying, yeah, it's very confusing now, and there is like data published by the Netherlands, by the way, and people are a bit confused. They don't really trust the EU for the data they put in. All types of toothing problems happen, but let's not, and I'm totally on the same page here, we can't mistake this by thinking that sustainability or the regulations will go away. Right, it will bite. It will take a little bit for a while, and the bit scary thing is that I mean, you walk around on the fairs and you see people talk about it. It could look from the outside, but doing audits, like Connor here, for example, you look in, and there's the machinery, right? You need to have the organizational ownership, the processes, the data collection systems, the metrics, and you know, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It will take a while for people to develop those things. So yeah, on the same page, it will bite. Perhaps not today, not tomorrow, but the day after.
Yeah.
Connor?
Yeah, it's all about being prepared. You know, the regulation is coming, so operators need to embrace it rather than, you know, being hurt by it. And that means behavior and how you actually operate a facility. I mean, like the reporting is the end of that process, but I mean, like, first of all, a data center has to be operated efficiently, and that means investing in proper technology for cooling efficiency, and then understanding how to collect the right data for reporting. That's an essential element to it. How to calculate your efficiency, and then to start formulating reporting, because let's say 2024, 2025 is going to form a baseline for public reporting, so operators, whatever level of efficiency they're at today, they need to make sure that they report on it accurately, and then moving forward, they use that as a baseline, and they need to demonstrate continual improvement, and that's, as I said, by how you operate your facility, but also the technologies that you use, and then improvements that can be made over a course of time, because there might be different targets in different countries, but as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing is that to form a baseline in 2024, 2025, and then to try to improve their efficiency and sustainability moving forward.
I need to ask you, Stefan,
Yes.
because in a way you are first mover from
That's right.
Germany. It's amazing. Because last year at the Stockholm event, you told us about the Energy Efficiency Act,
Yeah.
implemented 1st of January 2024, this year. So it should make Germany a leader in terms of regulatory stringency. What lessons can be learned from this past year?
Yeah, as I expressed in Stockholm last year, but also in Copenhagen this year, yeah, we are in the middle of it. And I expressed myself, I'm a fan of, let's say, a framework, legislation giving a framework, a banner people can operate within, because now there's an obligation. And as you said, we are in the middle of it. Thank God there is a transition period, so people are able to prepare. And when I say people, I mean the data center providers, the smaller ones and the medium-sized ones, who are struggling a bit with it, of course. Yeah, they know it's there. It's just around the corner. Some of the guys try to ignore it, but in the end of the day, they have to do this. They have to do the reporting.
So size matters?
Sometimes, size matters absolutely. The bigger ones, with more profit, they have, let's say, they can get in these well-known consultancy companies, PricewaterhouseCoopers, McKinsey, they will organize this and they will support them. The smaller ones, they don't even have the resources. They need to have really appoint a compliant or sustainability officer to really take care of the whole reporting. However, that is there, I can only embrace this from my personal view because we've been preaching this since many, many years to make use of the excess heat from data center sites. Yeah, because this is really a set which has been blown in the environment and not used. And we've been really preaching this, and now there is this obligation, and we see that the market, they're coming to us because they don't have an idea how to do this. Yeah, I think this is a good thing to have these banners. You can operate within, yeah.
So Thomas, do you see any big trends or global trends even, both in terms of size, but also maybe we're talking about AI, any kind of automation that could help the small ones doing their work a little better?
I mean, definitely, just to comment on that first, because I mean, I have North American colleagues, and they see that we push all this legislation, and we don't quantify the costs for for companies doing it, which you can't do in North America, right? So for some of the small companies, it can be quite overwhelming, I'm sure. And we may find ways to navigate in multiple steps, right? But now it will feel daunting. And of course, we do talk to people that companies that have software that automate more of the collection of data from invoices and stuff. So certainly innovation is happening there, but I think at this very point it can be, you saw the list there of things you need to do, and if a smaller operation, probably you need to have some of your better people involved in this as well from day one, so I think it's a real challenge.
I think we need you, Connor, because can you explain a little bit about what Bureau Veritas does, because I guess you're the one offering, collecting all these data points. Is there some blind spots we should be especially aware of?
Yeah, there is. There's many actually, but it's a preparation process. And as Stefan pointed out, like some of the bigger operators have the resources and the money behind them to be able to bring in expertise within their company to help them implement, design change, operational, behaviors. But the small to medium-sized operators are probably the ones that need the most help. And again, that's by, bringing in experts to help them identify areas of inefficiency or maybe some of the older technologies, and then bringing in consultants to advise them on new technologies, ways to implement, upgrade their facilities, which they'll actually benefit from, because it's going to help them with their customers, but also it's going to help them obviously in their energy bills. And I've actually seen then some new operators that are coming into the market, and they're actually designing their data centers from the inside out. So they're thinking about waste heat as a primary source of energy. So then they say, okay, this is a primary source of energy. First of all, we're going to secure a deal with a district heating company, and then they're going to build a data center around that source of heat, which is a really way to move forward to the future.
Didrik, last time I saw you were saying that your scope 3 is someone else's scope 1. Can you just explain that as well?
Well, it's scope 3 is always the one that people complain the most about, because they say, well, I can't control that. There's somebody else's, which is true. It's somebody else's scope 1, but the whole legislation is built around the fact that we are responsible for the whole picture. And so it shouldn't be a very different part of your obligation than scope 1 and 2, although it's perceived within a company as a very different ballgame. The first instance that a company can get rid of the obligation to do something with its scope 3 emissions, most of the companies jump on that possibility. And my plea is don't try to get rid of that obligation. It's part of your responsibility, because it's part of our whole responsibility. We are one planet, we have only one ecosystem. Your emissions are somebody else's scope 3 and the first vice versa.
So once the reporting is done, we're going to get a lot more transparency into the data center industry. it has been really hard to figure out what does AI, for instance, mean for the energy usage. Is the industry ready for that kind of scrutiny, of transparency? I mean, you've been living very well, quiet and good in the past.
I mean, I could comment on that. I think we continue to hide on the things that are most important. Let's say, take an example here. I think it's worthwhile spending a minute. A guy like Connor, good auditor, right, coming, but from another industry, comes into a data center today, and says, okay, using energy, using renewable energy, good, you're getting certificates and stuff. You have these cooling machines, these power systems. Yeah, you've been innovating a lot. They're really efficient these days. But what about those machines over there? Now, that's the servers. We don't really talk about them. But they consume about 60% of the energy, but we don't really talk publicly about that. So the IT side of it is still hiding. I mean, it's in some of the checks, like with the taxonomy, etc., but the numbers are not out there. Sure, you hear hyperscalers say we are on this high level of utilization of our machinery, but that's for their own services. What about all the infrastructure as a service? Who sees those numbers, right? So to some extent, we are still hiding. And this is one thing that we think that the leaders, the real sustainability leaders in the data center sectors, those are the ones that can tackle this one. Even if you're a co-location provider, perhaps you can innovate your business to help drive the utilization and just have less boxes and stuff. So I think that one, we're dodging on that one still.
Stefan?
Yeah, as mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of transparency, and those who are really doing their homework and driving or operating their sites as sustainable as possible, and really tackling Scope 3, because I think this is a big challenge, and you rightly mentioned the majority of Scope 3 emissions are the compute, are the servers at the end of the day. And I'm also a big fan and a big supporter when it comes to measuring this, and it's possible. You don't need to have these big consultancy companies. You can also use, let's say, a digital platform, really supporting you also as a small and medium-sized data center sites to really look in the upstream coming to you and the downstream also coming from you. And what I mean with downstream is the greenhouse gas emissions reducing by making use of the excess heat by a third party. This third party can also reduce its fossil fuel. Let's say if it's a building, if it's a kindergarten or swimming pool, and you also, as a data center site, you can also get into the carbon negative zone, right? And I'm so happy that you guys mentioned the US, because as a formerly leader from the OCP for Europe, I have good connections all over the world, but especially in the US, and I know of many people from the hyperscalers. And you know, we have the Dieselgate already, also the data center side. There was this article in The Guardian 3 months ago, really saying these figures reported by the big tech companies are all wrong. So 7 times less than the real carbon emissions, although they are really hiring all these fancy consultancy companies. So I'm a big fan making use of a digital platform. There are some really good tools out there to really support you to measure, and also you're enabling you to do all these reportings, of course, which are at the first place a burden. This is
reporting, regulation, it is going to be an advantage for the European competition. We have to wrap it up. I want to say for you, the audience, live and online, we will be talking about more ESG tools later today at 2:15 with Sunbird talking about reporting and monitoring and IT efficiency as a means of sustainability. But thank you all. Let's give them a big hand of applause.
Thank you.
Sorry, we don't have more time. But okay, now.
That's a good thing. Oh, they're on, yeah.
They're on. I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
They were not on last time? Yes.
Yeah,
No?
they work fine.
All right, ready to start this next session because now we are ready to dive into the specific challenges and opportunities of waste, heat reuse. And with me here, I had the pleasure of introducing Svante Horn from Scandinavian Data Centers and Thomas Parker from WARM. Thomas, welcome to you. Heat reuse has been... Please be quiet in the audience. It's nice that you are talking to each other, but either be inside and quiet or outside and talking. We're trying to make a movie here. Oh my God. Yes, Thomas is here. Thomas is here, I know. Thomas, heat reuse has been a topic that popped up regularly the last 10 years. We've been organizing Data Center Forum. WARM has been around for 9 years, and you've been working on waste heat from data centers for longer than that. How so?
Yeah, well, it actually started at something called the European Spallation Source, ESS, in Lund, which is a big science facility, and which there was a requirement, a promise to recycle all the waste heat. So we had to do that. That facility actually contains 2 data centers as well, although most of the heat came from what will be the world's most powerful linear proton accelerator. So that's where it all started. And a lot of it was low-grade waste heat, so we saw the opportunity there and the need to take this to what was the start in the Swedish industry.
Svante, we had the last speaker here. He was saying a lot about heat reuse. How viable is it? I mean, it sounds all great with tomatoes on the rooftops, but is it viable?
I'll start just very quickly with a soundbite, because that's what these podcasts or these conferences are all about. But the soundbite is YOTA, the word YOTA. It's a 1 with 21 zeros behind it. And that's the amount of bits of data going between data centers in the world currently. Now, there's a podcast called YOTA, and on the first episode, they were talking about this development. And in 4 years, they're actually going to need to coin a new word, because there will be 3 more zeros between the data centers. So that is basically just shows you the huge trend going on in terms of it's going from machine to human to machine, and that has some really important implications for heat reuse. And that's what we built our company around, is trying to be as optimal as possible in terms of the heat reuse. So the 3 big trends are higher and higher data quantities in the racks and in the servers, which generate higher and higher out temperatures. At the same time, more and more efficient heat pumps, and never let a good crisis go to waste. Speaking of the Ukraine crisis, in terms of all the district heating companies in Sweden actually losing money, even though they're increasing prices by 10 to 12% a year, all of a sudden you have quite a dynamic and interesting situation. And that's basically what we built our company around, is we want to start with the district heating companies, district heating grid as a starting point in how we design our data centers, not the other way around.
And is it easy to have this as the unique story point or selling point? How is it going?
Absolutely, super difficult. But I mean, if it's the flywheel, right? If we want to do this, as the previous speakers have talked about, we want to gather all the good forces, and our premise is our why is trying to create the best possible societal outcome per megawatt, and that's attracted some of the best people in the electricity grid and the district heating operations and the data center, and that combined has given us what we see as a platform that can become the data center 2.0 and maybe even 3.0.
So would you dare giving some kind of percentage of the Swedish and maybe just the Nordics using reheat usage? And how do you think it's going to develop over time? If you put the futurist glasses on?
You mean currently?
Currently versus maybe in 5 years' time,
well,
just to have an idea.
I'll give you the future. There's 290 municipalities in Sweden as a proxy for Scandinavia. Our name is Scandinavian Data Centers. 240 of these have district heating grids. In an ideal outcome, you would have 240 bespoke data centers acting as the energy node, the data node, and the heat node of these communities.
Wow. What is your comment on that? Is it
Well,
plausible?
No, I mean, I think you're spot on in terms of how to get this started. And I mean, you need to look at, first of all, the energy efficiency of what you do, and then conserving the energy quality, which means for data centers, liquid cooling and getting the temperature levels up. Otherwise, it just will not work sustainably. But then there's all kinds of things like siting. You need to be near, if you want to go to district heating, someone who actually wants the district heating. But I think that's, yeah, you have to work on the whole chain. And it actually starts with what you do. Is the purpose of the data center contributing to sustainable development? Otherwise, the rest is just fig leaves.
I look forward to see what you think about these very creative examples of reuse of heat around the world.
While district heating might be the most likely reuse of data center waste heat, there are several innovative other uses around the world. Eco Data Center in Sweden uses the excess heat from their server halls to produce wood pallets, for instance. Norwegian Lefdal Mine wants to use it for an onshore fish farm, while also in Norway is a lobster farm that uses Green Mountain's waste heat. Something similar happens in northern Japan, where the heat is used to harvest, among others, eels. But it's not just for fish. Waste heat is also being used to heat water for humans. Deep Green uses small data centers to heat swimming pools in the UK. Icelandic startup Ringvarme envisions purpose-built biomes for food production, while the University of Paris Saclay and Data4 launched a pilot to grow algae and create the world's first biocircular data center. Also in Paris, Equinix built a greenhouse on top of its data center, growing tomatoes with server heat. Swedish Warm has several innovative projects running, like vegetable production in greenhouses, while Regenergy Östersund is open for different type of applications.
So Thomas, lots of tomatoes out there. Any other great examples that you can think of?
Well, all of the examples in the movie and a few more. Aquaculture is good because you're recycling it's water to water, so a more efficient process. There are plenty of fish that like the temperatures you'd get from a conventional data center. The trouble there is if you bring a local species up on land, you don't really have a heat need, you have a cooling need. So in my mind, we'd be looking at tropical species for the Scandinavian market. The problem there is that there's no market for selling those tropical species because that's not what we eat in Scandinavia. So that's the trick. But it's all good, and you really have to build it case by case. But there is a lot to do, and of course, the higher the temperature you have, the more you can do.
And we will have more liquid cooling due to AI, amongst other things. Is that ideal for this heat reuse? Is it the best?
It's a necessity for it to become scalable. I mean, it needs to be economic to be scalable, and if there's no scale, there's no impact. So that's what we're working very hard to do, is try to find the best possible economic outcome, because data center operators are generally data center operators. They are not looking at it from an energy perspective. They're not looking at it, definitely not from a heat perspective. And what we're trying to do is, find all the synergies in terms of minimizing costs and maximizing revenue stacks so we can make as much money as possible in each of the energy, data, and heat segments that we operate in. And by doing that, we can create the circular platform that can compete 100% on sustainability, but also on price. And that's how we're going to win.
And what about tax issues? That's usually a case also in the Scandinavian
Don't get me
countries.
started.
Oh, but give me a few comments on that, please.
Well, currently in Sweden, we have a very interesting legislation that operators who have their own servers are tax exempt from energy tax, which for me is a slap in the face of all the residents of Sweden, because we're using our common good power to give them profits, and they're not even giving us heat reuse. So they're contributing in the same way that Bitcoin miners are contributing, not very much. While if you're a co-location operator and you're working with heat reuse, then all of a sudden you are put into the tax bucket of normal taxes like everyone else.
I think that's more or less what we have time for. So a final closing remark, maybe a little dream for the future?
Sure. I think that an important point is that in my mind, there's no way we can reach a sustainable future without data centers. So if you want to work with Warm, which I hope in terms of heat recycling and doing other good stuff, well, tell me first what good you are doing for sustainability, and it's probably lots. Even if it is cat pictures, there's a story there. If it's Bitcoin, not so much. Talk to someone else.
We're never going to have a crypto operator in our data centers, full stop. But anyway, no, I'm actually going to be on a podcast in Southwest by Southwest in Austin in the spring, and I'm going to be. It's an AI podcast, and it's called Mission Critical, because the vast bulk, speaking of European efficiency and productivity of AI companies, are in the U.S., and that's the big trade. We want to give U.S. AI companies the most reliable, the cheapest, and the greenest power in the world, where there's a surplus in Sweden, and in return, we just want their heat, and they like that story quite a lot.
Great, we'll definitely link to that. Thank you both. Let's give them a big hand of applause. With that, I would like to thank all my guests for their insights, as well as our audience here in Stockholm and those viewers turning in online. You have now joined us for the first episode of Data Center Changemakers Sweden, but join us again at 2 o'clock this afternoon for the second episode of today, where we will focus on energy. See you later this afternoon.